Kang Dae-ho sat in the corner booth of the space station's quietest bar, staring at his untouched drink. The amber liquid reflected the tired lines around his eyes. At 35, he looked older than his years. 15 years of solving impossible. Problems across 3 galactic sectors had worn him down like water wearing away stone. The barkeeper, a friendly Altarian with blue skin and 4 arms, had stopped trying to make conversation an hour ago. Dae-ho was famous throughout this part of the galaxy. Everyone knew the human who could fix anything. Wars between species, trade disputes that lasted decades, even that time he convinced the Miners Guild to stop cracking planets for rare metals. If there was a problem no one else could solve, they called Dae-ho. But today he was done. His communication device buzzed on the table. Another job offer. The third one, this hour. Dae-ho turned it off without looking. He had made his decision 3 days ago when he finished the Valathi-Namora trade war. 2 years of careful negotiation, countless sleepless nights, and more headaches than he could count. The crystalline Valathi Empire had been ready to declare war on the gas giant dwellers of Namora over shipping routes. Now they were business partners. Everyone called it a miracle. Dae-ho called it exhausting. He pulled out a small data pad and scrolled through vacation destinations. Most places in the known galaxy recognized him. The last thing he wanted was someone asking him to solve their problems while he was trying to rest. He needed somewhere quiet, somewhere far from everything. His finger stopped on an advertisement. Sanctuary's Rest, a peaceful moon resort at the edge of civilized space. The pictures showed beautiful beaches under purple skies, luxury hotels, and the promise of complete privacy. Perfect. Excuse me? Are you Kang Dae-ho? He looked up to see a human woman standing beside his table. She had short black hair and tired eyes that reminded him of his own. She wore simple traveler's clothes, but there was something about the way she carried herself that suggested intelligence and education. Depends who's asking, Dae-ho said carefully. The woman smiled. I'm Park So-min. I'm not here to offer you a job, if that's what you're worried about. I just recognized you from the news feeds. And I wanted to say thank you. She gestured to the empty seat across from him. May I? Dae-ho nodded, curious despite his exhaustion. So-min sat down. I'm a xenoarchaeologist. I study ancient alien civilizations. 3 years ago, you prevented the Helix Corporation from strip mining the Keth homeworld. Those ruins I was studying there led to the biggest discovery of my career. You're welcome. I guess. Dae-ho took his first sip of the drink. It burned, which felt appropriate. What did you find? So-min's eyes lit up with the excitement of someone passionate about their work. Evidence of a civilization that existed before any of the current galactic species achieved spaceflight. We call them the precursors. The ruins on Keth were just the beginning. Sounds interesting. Dae-ho meant it. After years of dealing with current political problems, ancient history seemed refreshingly simple. It was until the Galactic Archaeological Commission classified my research. So-min's excitement faded. Apparently, some of what I found was considered too dangerous for public knowledge. Dangerous how? So-min lowered her voice. References to weapons that could reshape matter itself, ships that could travel between dimensions, and something called the Void Serpent that supposedly could end entire star systems. Dae-ho raised an eyebrow. Sounds like science fiction. That's what I thought too, until I started cross-referencing with other archaeological sites. The same symbols, the same technological descriptions showing up on worlds thousands of light years apart. Either it's the most elaborate hoax in galactic history, or these precursors really existed and had technology beyond anything we can imagine. So what are you doing now? So-min sighed. Running away just like you. I've been ordered to stop. My research, threatened with imprisonment if I continue, and watched my life's work get locked away in classified vaults. I need a break from all of it. Daeho studied her face. He recognized the look of someone who had been pushed too far. Where are you headed? Sanctuary's Rest. You? Same place. He almost smiled. What are the odds? In a galaxy this big? Pretty small. So-min paused. Want to share transport? Luxury liners are expensive, but split between two people. Daeho considered it. He had planned to travel alone, but something about So-min seemed genuine. She wasn't asking him to solve her problems, just offering to share the cost of getting away from them. Why not? He said. 2 days later, they were aboard the passenger liner Stellar Dream, a beautiful ship that catered to wealthy travelers seeking exotic destinations. Daeho had booked a simple cabin, but the ship's staff had upgraded him to a luxury suite when they learned who he was. Fame had its perks, even when you didn't want it. So-min had the cabin next to his. They had taken to eating meals together and talking about safe topics. The ship's facilities, the view of stars through the observation deck, anything except work. It was the most relaxed Daeho had felt in years. On their 3rd day of travel, things started going wrong. It began with small problems. The ship's navigation system displayed error messages. The artificial gravity fluctuated slightly, enough to make walking feel strange. The temperature controls in several cabins stopped working. Captain Vexhai, a 6-armed Threxian who had been running passenger ships for 20 years, assured everyone that these were minor technical difficulties. His crew was experienced and would have everything fixed soon. But Daeho noticed how the captain's usually steady voice shook slightly when he made these announcements. He also noticed how the crew members avoided eye contact with passengers and whispered among themselves in worried tones. On the 4th day, the ship's main computer started displaying star charts that didn't match any known navigation databases. When passengers asked about their location, crew members gave different answers. That evening, Daeho found So-min in the observation lounge, staring out at the stars with a troubled expression. "Something's wrong," she said without looking at him. "I noticed." Daeho sat beside her. "The crew is scared of something." "It's not just that." So-min pointed to a section of space that looked empty to Daeho's eyes. "I've been tracking our position using the star patterns. We're not where we should be." "How far off course?" "About 3 light years, and we're not moving toward Sanctuary's Rest anymore. We're drifting toward something else." Before Daeho could ask what she meant, the ship's communication system crackled to life. Captain Vexhai's voice filled the lounge, but now it carried a note of barely controlled panic. "Attention, passengers. We are experiencing some navigation difficulties due to unexpected gravitational anomalies in this sector. Please remain calm while we work to resolve the situation." Daeho and So-min exchanged glances. In his experience, when authority figures told people to remain calm, it usually meant there was very good reason to panic. The lights in the observation lounge flickered, and for just a moment, the stars outside seemed to shift and dance in patterns that hurt to look at. Somewhere in the distance, something was calling to them through the void of space. And despite his desperate need for a quiet vacation, Daeho had the sinking feeling that his reputation for solving impossible problems was about to be put to the test once again. The stellar dream continued its unwilling journey toward whatever. Waited in the darkness, carrying two exhausted humans who had thought they were running away from adventure, only to find that some destinations choose their own visitors. The stellar dream shuddered as it dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Daeho gripped the armrest of his chair in the passenger lounge, watching through the large windows as normal space returned around them. The stars looked different here, older somehow, with a pale light that made him uncomfortable. Captain Vex-High's voice came over the ship's communication system, steadier now but still carrying worry. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived at Sanctuary's Rest. However, we are experiencing some delays with docking procedures. Please remain in your cabins until further notice." So-Min looked at Daeho from across their table. "That doesn't sound right. Why would docking take so long?" Daeho stood and walked to the window. In the distance, he could see Sanctuary's Rest, a beautiful moon covered in blue oceans and green continents. It looked exactly like the advertisements promised, but something was wrong with the space around it. "So-Min, come look at this." She joined him at the window. Following his pointing finger, she saw what had caught his attention. At the very edge of the star system, barely visible against the black of space, was something huge. It looked like a ship, but it was larger than anything either of them had ever seen. Even from this distance, it was clearly massive. "What is that thing?" So-Min whispered. Before Daeho could answer, a crew member hurried past them in the corridor, outside the lounge. The alien looked frightened. Its normally blue skin turned pale green. More crew members followed, all moving quickly and talking in hushed, worried voices. Daeho made a decision. "Come on, we need to find out what's happening." They left the lounge and followed the crew members toward the ship's command section. Most passenger areas were restricted, but Daeho's reputation had gotten him access to places before. He hoped it would work again. The command deck was chaos. Crew members worked frantically at control stations, while Captain Vex-High stood in the center, his 6 arms moving between different displays. When he saw Daeho and So-Min enter, his expression grew even more worried. "Mr. Kang, you should not be here. Please return to your cabin." "Captain, I've helped solve problems across 3 galactic sectors. Whatever is happening, maybe I can help." Vex-High looked at him for a long moment, then nodded tiredly. "Very well, but you may wish you had stayed in your cabin." He gestured to the main display screen. 3 days ago, that appeared. The screen showed a detailed scan of the massive object they had seen from the window. Up close, it was even more disturbing. The ship was enormous, easily 10 times larger than the biggest military vessels Daeho had ever seen. Its design was, unlike anything in current galactic databases, smooth black surfaces covered with strange symbols that seemed to move when you looked at them directly. "We received an emergency signal from Sanctuary's Rest when we were still a day away," Vex-High continued. "The resort is nearly empty. Most guests left as soon as that thing appeared. The few who remain are too frightened to leave their rooms." So-Min studied the display with growing excitement and fear. "Captain, can you show me those symbols on the hull?" "Why?" "I'm a xenoarchaeologist. I might recognize them." Vex-High nodded to one of his crew members who enhanced the image. The symbols became clearer, and So-Min's face went pale. "Oh no," she whispered. "What is it?" Daeho asked. "I've seen these symbols before. In my research on the precursors, this ship, it might be one of theirs." The command deck fell silent, except for the humming of machinery. Every crew member stared at So-min. "The precursors are myths," Captain Vexhai said, but his voice lacked conviction. "No, they're not." So-min's voice grew stronger. "And if this really is one of their ships, we're all in terrible danger." 2 hours later, the Stellar Dream had docked at Sanctuary's Rest, but the usual excitement of arriving at a vacation destination was completely absent. The docking bay was almost empty, with only a few maintenance workers visible. Even they looked nervous and kept glancing at the sky. Dae-ho and So-min walked through the resort's main entrance hall. The place was beautiful. Polished stone floors, hanging gardens, and large windows that showed the moon's stunning landscape. But it felt like a tomb. Their footsteps echoed in the empty space. "Welcome to Sanctuary's Rest," said a tired voice. They turned to see a middle-aged human man approaching them. He was well-dressed, but looked like he hadn't slept in days. His name tag read, Yim Tae-jun, Resort Manager. "Mr. Yim," Dae-ho said, "I'm Kang Dae-ho. I have a reservation." Tae-jun's eyes widened. "The Kang Dae-ho, the fixer, thank the stars you're here. Maybe you can help us with our situation." "What situation exactly?" Tae-jun led them to a quiet corner of the lobby and lowered his voice. 3 days ago, that ship appeared. Since then, we've had 90% of our guests check out early. The ones who stayed are too scared to leave their rooms. The local wildlife has gone crazy. Animals running away from nothing, birds flying in circles, even the fish in our artificial lakes are acting strange. "Has the ship done anything?" So-min asked. "Not directly, but our computers have been acting up. Sometimes they display information in languages none of us recognize. The artificial intelligence systems keep talking about the return and judgment time. Our maintenance robots have started building things, strange geometric shapes. That hurt to look at." Dae-ho felt his vacation slipping away. "What do the local authorities say?" "That's the problem. We contacted the Galactic Council 3 days ago. They said they would send help, but we haven't heard anything since. It's like they're avoiding this system entirely." So-min pulled out her data pad and started working. "Mr. Yim, can you give me access to your archaeological databases? I need to cross-reference something." "Of course, anything that might help." While So-min worked, Dae-ho walked to one of the large windows and stared at the mysterious ship. Even from here on the moon's surface, it was visible as a dark spot against the stars. Something about it made his skin crawl. "Dae-ho, you need to see this," So-min called. He returned to find her staring at her data pad with a mixture of excitement and terror. "I found references to ships like this in 3 different archaeological sites," she said. "The symbols match perfectly, but there's more. According to the ancient texts, ships like this don't just appear randomly. They're activated by specific conditions." "What conditions?" "When a species reaches a certain level of technological and social development, the texts call it the time of judgment. The ship appears to test whether the species is worthy of continued existence." Tae-jun laughed nervously. "That's ridiculous. It's just an old ship." "Then why are all your AI systems talking about judgment?" So-min asked. "And why did the Galactic Council stop responding to your calls?" Before anyone could answer, the resort's communication system activated. A voice spoke, but it wasn't in any language they recognized. The words sounded ancient and cold, like wind blowing through empty tombs. All around them, the resort's lights began to flicker. Through the windows, they could see the mysterious ship in the distance. It was no longer dark and silent. It was beginning to glow. "Mr. Kang," Tae-jun said quietly. I really hope you're as good at fixing impossible problems as people say, because I think we're about to face something that's been waiting a very long time to wake up. Dae-ho stared at the glowing ship and realized that his quiet vacation had just become the most important job of his career. The question was whether he could solve a problem that was millions of years in the making. Outside, the ancient ship continued to wake up, and somewhere in its vast hull, things that had slept since before humanity learned to use fire were stirring to life. Dae-ho stood on the resort's observation deck, watching as dozens of warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They were sleek, modern vessels from the Galactic Council fleet, bristling with weapons and sensor arrays. At their head was a massive dreadnought that he recognized immediately. The Iron Will, he said quietly. You know that ship? So-min asked, joining him at the railing. I know its captain. Dae-ho's expression was complicated. Admiral Ko Sun-woo. We served together in the military before I became a civilian fixer. Tae-jun looked relieved for the first time in days. Thank goodness. The military will know what to do about that thing. Dae-ho wasn't so sure. He had seen Sun-woo handle many situations, but nothing like this. Still, having professional help was better than facing the unknown alone. His communication device buzzed. A message from the Iron Will. Dae-ho, we need to talk. Immediately. 20 minutes later, Dae-ho sat in the conference room of Admiral Sun-woo's flagship. She looked older than when he had last seen her 3 years ago, with new lines around, her eyes and gray streaks in her black hair. The uniform suited her, but he could see the stress she was carrying. It's good to see you, old friend, she said, even under these circumstances. Sun-woo, what's really happening here? The Admiral activated a holographic display in the center of the table. It showed a star map of the galaxy with 17 red dots scattered across different sectors. 3 days ago, ships identical to the one in this system appeared at 16 other locations. All of them are near-inhabited worlds. All of them started, glowing at exactly the same time. Dae-ho studied the map. The locations seemed random at first, but then he noticed a pattern. These are all systems with advanced civilizations, high technology, complex societies. Exactly. And we've tried to investigate several of them. Sun-woo's expression darkened. It hasn't gone well. She changed the display to show battle footage. Dae-ho watched as military ships approached one of the ancient vessels, only to suddenly stop moving. The ships drifted helplessly as their crews simply vanished. When rescue teams boarded the empty vessels later, they found no signs of struggle, no bodies, nothing. The crews had simply disappeared. How many people? Dae-ho asked quietly. 12,000 so far, across 7 different investigation attempts. The ships are intact, all systems working, but every living being aboard is gone. So-min, who had been given permission to attend the meeting, leaned forward. Admiral, I've been researching these ships. I believe they're weapons created by an ancient civilization called the Precursors. The Precursors are legends, Sun-woo said, but she didn't sound convinced. No, they're not. And if I'm right, these ships aren't just weapons. They're tests. So-min activated her own datapad, displaying the ancient symbols she had been studying. According to the texts I've found, the Precursors created something called the Void Serpent as their final act before their civilization ended. What kind of test? Dae-ho asked. I'm not sure, but the texts suggest it's meant to determine whether younger species deserve to inherit the galaxy. So-min paused. Or whether they should be eliminated. The conference room fell silent. Outside the windows, they could see the ancient ship in the distance, its glow growing brighter. Sun Wu broke the silence. Our scientists have been analyzing the energy readings from all 17 ships. They're not using any technology we understand. The energy signatures suggest they can manipulate matter at the atomic level, create weapons that exist partially, outside normal space, and generate shields that our most powerful weapons can't penetrate. Have you tried communication? Daeho asked. Every method we know. The ships receive the signals, we can tell that much, but they don't respond. At least, not in any way we can understand. As if summoned by their conversation, Taejun's voice came over the ship's communication system. Admiral, we're receiving a priority message from Sanctuary's Rest. You need to see this. The display changed to show the resort's main computer system. Lines of text scrolled across the screen, but not in any recognizable language. The symbols were the same ones So-min had been studying. It started an hour ago, Taejun's voice continued. Every computer system on the moon is displaying the same message. Our translation programs can't make sense of it. So-min stared at the symbols, her face pale. I can read some of this. It's a warning. Something about the final test and judgment for the young races. Young races? Sun Wu asked. All of us. Every species in the current galactic community. According to this, we're all considered children compared to the precursors. Daeho felt a chill run down his spine. So-min, what exactly happened to the precursors? Why did their civilization end? The texts aren't clear, but from what I can piece together, they became so advanced that they lost the ability to grow or change. They reached a point where they knew everything, controlled everything, and had nothing left to strive for. Some sources suggest they chose to end their existence rather than become stagnant. But not before creating these ships, Sun Wu said. Grimly, exactly. The Void Serpent was meant to be their legacy, a way to ensure that any species that came after them would be tested before being allowed to reach the same level of advancement. Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the Iron Will. A communications officer's voice filled the conference room. Admiral, the ancient ship is moving. It's leaving its position at the edge of the system. They rushed to the bridge where the main display showed the massive ancient vessel slowly turning toward the inhabited worlds of the system. It moved without any visible means of propulsion, gliding through space like a living thing. Where is it heading? Sun Wu demanded. Sanctuary's Rest, ma'am. But its trajectory will take it past 3 other inhabited moons first. Evacuate those moons immediately. All civilian populations are to be moved to safe distance. Ma'am, at its current speed, we have maybe 18 hours before it reaches the first moon. Daeho watched the ancient ship on the display. Something about its movement seemed purposeful, almost intelligent. Sun Wu, I don't think it's planning to attack those moons. What makes you say that? Look at its path. It's not taking the most direct route. It's visiting them, like it's studying the populations. So-min gasped. The test. It's beginning the test. What kind of test requires studying entire populations? Sun Wu asked. I don't know. But we need to find out before it finishes. So-min turned to Daeho. You're the best negotiator in known space. If anyone can establish communication with that thing, it's you. Daeho looked at the ancient ship, now glowing brighter as it moved between the moons. Somewhere inside that massive vessel was intelligence, older than any civilization they knew. The question was whether it would be willing to talk or if it had already decided their fate. "Admiral, I need a small, fast ship, and I need So-Min with me." "Absolutely not. We've already lost 12,000 people to these things. Those were military vessels approaching with weapons ready. Maybe a civilian approach will be different." Sunwoo stared at him for a long moment. "And if you're wrong? Then you'll have lost 2 people instead of 2 fleets." Daeho's voice was steady. "But if I'm right, maybe we can find out what this test actually involves. And maybe, just maybe, we can find a way to pass it." Outside, the Void Serpent continued its slow journey between the worlds, ancient and patient as death itself, carrying secrets that could save or damn every living being in the galaxy. The test had begun, and humanity's greatest fixer was about to face the most important negotiation of his life. The small scout ship Meridian approached the ancient vessel with all weapons powered down and shields at minimum. Daeho sat in the pilot's seat, his hands steady on the controls despite the fear growing in his chest. The Void Serpent filled their entire view now, a mountain of black metal covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change when he wasn't looking directly at them. "Proximity alert," announced Lee Min-ho from the navigation station. The young data analyst had volunteered for the mission, saying his skills might be needed if they encountered alien computer systems. "We're now within the ship's energy field." So-Min checked her instruments at the science station. "I'm reading massive power signatures, but nothing that suggests weapons targeting us. It's almost like the ship is waiting." "Waiting for what?" asked Choi Hyun-woo, the Marine who completed their small team. He had insisted on coming despite Daeho's protests that this was a diplomatic mission, not a military one. "For us to make the first move," Daeho said quietly. Admiral Sunwoo's voice crackled over the communication system from the Iron Will, which was maintaining a safe distance. "Meridian, report your status." "We're okay so far," Daeho replied. "The ship isn't responding to our presence, but it's not attacking either. We're going to attempt docking. Be careful, old friend." Daeho guided their small vessel toward what appeared to be a docking bay near the center of the ancient ship. As they approached, massive doors opened silently, revealing a chamber large enough to hold dozens of ships their size. Lights activated automatically, creating a path for them to follow. "It's inviting us in," So-Min whispered. "Or luring us into a trap," Hyun-woo muttered, checking his equipment for the 3rd time. They docked without incident. The ship's atmosphere was breathable, according to their sensors, though it had a strange quality that made their instruments give conflicting readings. As they prepared to leave their ship, Daeho turned to his team. "Remember, we're here to communicate, not fight. If something goes wrong, get back to the ship immediately." The airlock opened with a soft hiss. They stepped into the ancient vessel. The interior was unlike anything they had ever seen. The corridors were vast, with ceilings that disappeared into darkness above. The walls were covered in the same shifting symbols they had seen on the hull, but inside the ship, the symbols glowed with a soft blue light that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. "This place is enormous," Min-ho said, his voice echoing strangely. "My sensors can't find the limits of it. It's like the ship is bigger inside than outside." "That should be impossible," Hyun-woo said. "So should ships that make people disappear," So-Min replied. "We're dealing with technology beyond our understanding." They followed the lighted pathway deeper into the ship. The walls around them began to change, showing images that moved like living paintings. Daho saw scenes of vast cities under alien skies, beings of light building impossible structures, and fleets of ships traveling between the stars. "It's showing us the precursors," so Min breathed. "This is their history." The images grew darker as they walked. The beautiful cities began to fade. The beings of light became fewer and dimmer. The great fleets stopped flying and gathered in empty space, as if waiting for something that never came. "What happened to them?" Minho asked. "They grew tired," said a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The team stopped walking. The voice spoke again, clearer this time, in perfect galactic standard language. "Welcome, young ones. You have come seeking answers. We will provide them." The corridor around them changed, expanding into a vast chamber filled with floating platforms. On these platforms stood figures that hurt to look at directly. They appeared to be made of shifting, geometric shapes that formed almost familiar forms before breaking apart and reforming. "You are the precursors," Daho said. It wasn't a question. "We are what remains of them, echoes preserved in crystal and energy. We have waited long for species worthy of testing." "Testing for what?" So-Min asked. The shapes shifted, and when they spoke again, sadness colored their words. "To see if you will make the same mistakes we did, to determine if you deserve the chance to surpass us, or if you must be stopped before you destroy yourselves as we did." Hyunwoo moved slightly, his hand near his weapon. "You're threatening us?" "We are offering you a choice that we never had." The precursor shapes moved closer. "Long ago we achieved everything your species dreams of: perfect technology, complete knowledge, total control over matter and energy. We eliminated war, hunger, disease, and death itself." "That sounds wonderful," Minho said. "It was horrible." The voice carried eons of regret. With nothing left to achieve, nothing left to discover, nothing left to become, we lost the ability to grow. We became trapped in our own perfection, watching the universe but no longer truly living in it. Daho began to understand. "So you decided to end your civilization. Some of us did. Others refused to accept that our great achievement was also our doom. The division tore us apart. In our final days, we created the Void Serpents as our legacy, as weapons to destroy other civilizations before they could make the same mistake," So-Min said, her voice angry. "No!" The shapes pulsed with something, like surprise. As teachers, as guardians against the trap of perfection. The chamber around them changed again, showing images of other species. Daho saw proud civilizations reaching for the stars, achieving great things, then beginning to stagnate as they gained more and more control over their worlds. 17 times before your age, we have watched species reach this critical point. 17 times they have failed our test. "What happened to them?" Daho asked, though he feared the answer. "They chose power over growth, technology over wisdom, control over freedom. So we ended their civilizations before they could trap themselves in perfection as we did." "You murdered them," Hyunwoo said angrily. "We saved them from a fate worse than death. Better to die while still capable of dreams than to live forever without purpose." Minho was working frantically at his portable computer. "Daho, I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout the ship. I think it's preparing to do something." "The test begins now," the precursors announced. "You will be offered our technology, our knowledge, our power over matter and energy. The choice you make will determine the fate of every species in your galaxy." The air in the chamber began to shimmer. Deho felt something touching his mind, offering him visions of incredible machines, unlimited energy, the power to reshape entire planets with a thought. "Choose wisely," the precursors said. "Accept our gifts and follow the path to perfection we once walked. Refuse them and remain as you are, limited but free to grow." "And if we choose wrong?" So-Min asked. "Then your species joins the 17 that came before, and we wait for the next civilization to reach this moment." Deho felt the weight of every living being in the galaxy pressing down on him, billions of lives hanging on a decision he was never meant to make. The power being offered was incredible, but the price was everything that made life worth living. He looked at his team. Minho was staring at the visions of advanced technology with wonder and fear. Hyun-woo had his weapon ready, though it would be useless against beings made of energy. So-Min was studying the precursors with the intensity of someone trying to solve the greatest puzzle of her career. "How long do we have to decide?" Deho asked. "The test has already begun. Your ships in orbit are being offered the same choice. Your leaders, your scientists, your philosophers. All must choose, but know this. If even one of your kind accepts our gifts, the test is failed." Through the ship's communication system, Deho could hear Admiral Sun-woo's voice, reporting the same visions appearing on her ships, the same impossible offer being made to every human in the fleet. The most important negotiation of his life had become the most important choice in galactic history. And somehow, he had to find a way to convince an entire species to refuse the greatest gift ever offered. The precursors waited, patient as death, for humanity's answer. Deho closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Around him, the precursors waited for humanity's answer to their test. The visions of incredible technology still flickered at the edges of his mind, offering power beyond imagination. But something felt wrong about the whole situation. "I need to understand something," he said, opening his eyes to face the shifting geometric forms. "You say you're testing us to prevent us from making your mistakes, but you also destroyed 17 civilizations. Who failed your test? We saved them from a fate worse than extinction," the precursors replied. "No," Deho said firmly. "You didn't save them. You became exactly what you claim to hate." The shapes stopped moving for a moment. "Explain. You achieved perfect technology and lost your humanity. You say it made you unable to grow or change. But look at what you're doing now. You've spent millions of years doing the exact same thing over and over, testing species and destroying them when they fail. How is that different from being trapped in perfection?" So-Min stepped forward, understanding dawning on her face. "Deho's right. You never escaped your trap. You just found a new way to express it." "We are guardians," the precursors said, but their voice carried less certainty than before. "You're murderers," Hyun-woo said bluntly. "You're using your fear of stagnation as an excuse to prevent anyone else from succeeding where you failed." Minho looked up from his computer. "The energy readings are fluctuating. I think our words are affecting them somehow." Deho pressed his advantage. This was what he did best, finding the truth beneath surface positions, understanding what people really wanted even when they didn't understand it themselves. "Tell me about your civilization before it ended," he said. "Were you always alone in the galaxy?" The precursors' forms shifted uncomfortably. "There were other species when we began our rise to perfection." "What happened to them?" Silence filled the chamber. Finally, one of the shapes spoke. "They were inferior. We guided them, protected them, made decisions for them because we knew better. You controlled them, So Min said. Just like you're trying to control us now. We were wise. They were not. And where are those species? Now? Daeho asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. Gone. They could not adapt to the perfect world we created for them. They lost the will to live, to grow, to dream. They faded away until only we remained. So you didn't just destroy yourselves with perfection, Daeho said. You destroyed everyone around you too, and now you're doing it again, just more directly. The chamber around them began to shake. The precursors' forms became more agitated, shifting faster and losing their almost human shapes. We are preventing suffering, they insisted. You're preventing life, Daeho shot back. You're so afraid of anyone making your mistakes that you won't let them make any choices at all. The test is fair. They can refuse our gifts. No, it's not fair, So Min said angrily. You're offering people ultimate power and then killing them if they want it. It's like offering water to someone dying of thirst and then murdering them for drinking. You don't understand, the precursors said. Perfect knowledge leads to perfect control. Perfect control leads to stagnation. Stagnation leads to the death of everything meaningful. Then why are you trying to achieve perfect control over the galaxy? Daeho asked. You're deciding who lives and who dies. You're making choices for entire civilizations. How is that different from what destroyed you? The shaking in the chamber intensified. Through the communication system, they could hear Admiral Sun Wu's voice reporting that all the ancient ships throughout the galaxy were showing similar disturbances. We are protecting, the precursors began, but their words trailed off. You're repeating your mistakes on a galactic scale, Daeho said more gently. You achieved perfection and it destroyed your ability to grow. Now you're trying to control every other species' growth. You've become the very thing that destroyed you. What would you have us do? The question came out as a whisper from beings made of energy and regret. Let go, So Min said simply. Stop trying to control everyone else's choices. Let civilizations make their own mistakes and find their own solutions. But they will suffer as we suffered. Maybe, Daeho admitted, or maybe they'll find answers. You never could. Maybe diversity and imperfection are stronger than unity and perfection. You'll never know as long as you keep destroying everyone who tries. Hyun Woo, who had been quiet for several minutes, suddenly spoke up. You know what I think? I think you're not really testing us at all. You're testing yourselves. The precursors turned their attention to him. Explain. You want someone to tell you it's okay to stop. You've been trapped in this cycle for millions of years, destroying civilizations because you're too afraid to let them try to succeed where you failed. You want someone to give you permission to finally rest. The chamber fell silent except for the humming of ancient machinery. The precursors' forms became still, more solid-looking than they had been since the conversation began. We have watched the galaxy grow dark and bright again 17 times, they said finally. We have ended 17 civilizations. We told ourselves it was mercy, but you know it was fear. Daeho finished. Fear that someone might prove you wrong. That perfection doesn't have to lead to stagnation, that there might have been another way for your people. We cannot undo what we have done. No, So Min said softly, but you can stop doing it. You can choose to trust that other species might find answers you never could. Minho looked up from his instruments again. The energy buildup is stabilizing. Whatever was happening, I think, it's stopping. The other ships throughout the galaxy, Daeho said, Are they all connected to you? Yes. We are one consciousness spread across many vessels. What we decide here affects all of them. Then you have a choice to make, Deho said. Continue the cycle of destruction you've been trapped in for millions of years, or find the courage to let go and see what happens when civilizations are free to find their own paths. And if they make the same mistakes we did, then they'll deal with the consequences just like you did. But maybe they won't. Maybe diversity makes species stronger. Maybe the fact that we argue and fight and disagree with each other is exactly what prevents us from becoming stagnant. The precursors were quiet for a long time. Around them, the ancient ship systems hummed and clicked as processes older than recorded history considered possibilities they had never allowed themselves to imagine. You would refuse our technology even knowing what it could give you? They asked finally. Yes, Deho said without hesitation. Because the journey is more important than the destination. Because growth is more valuable than perfection. Because we'd rather fail while trying to become something better than succeed by becoming something we're not. The precursors' forms began to change again, but this time they seemed to be becoming more peaceful, less agitated. Perhaps, they said slowly, it is time for us to learn something new. In space around the ancient ship, 17 vessels that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years began to power down their weapons. The test was entering its final phase, but now the question wasn't whether humanity would pass or fail. The question was whether beings older than stars could find the courage to change. The ancient chamber filled with a sound like wind chimes made of starlight. The precursors' geometric forms were changing, becoming softer somehow, less sharp and demanding. For the first time since entering the ship, Deho felt like he could breathe easily. We have spent millions of years believing we were protecting the galaxy, the precursors said, their voice carrying a wonder that hadn't been there before. But you are correct. We became the very thing we feared most. Controllers who stole choice from others. So Min stepped closer to the floating platforms. What you built was incredible. Your technology, your knowledge, your achievements, but you were right the first time. It's not the destination that matters. It's the journey. The journey, one of the shapes repeated, as if tasting the words. We had forgotten that growth requires the freedom to make mistakes. Minho looked up from his instruments with excitement. The energy signatures are changing throughout the ship. It's like the whole vessel is transforming. Through the communication system, Admiral Sunwoo's voice crackled with static. Deho, all 17 ships are powering down their weapons systems. Whatever you're doing in there, keep doing it. Hyunwoo had relaxed his defensive stance, but his eyes remained alert. So what happens now? Do you just disappear and leave us alone? The precursors were quiet for a moment. When they spoke again, their words carried the weight of a decision that had taken eons to make. We offer you a different choice than the one we presented before. Not our technology or destruction, but something we should have offered long ago, the freedom to find your own path. What does that mean exactly? Deho asked. The chamber around them began to change again. The walls became transparent, showing the vast interior of the ship. They could see massive libraries filled with information, workshops containing tools, beyond imagination, and gardens where impossible plants grew under artificial suns. We will transform our ships into monuments to choice, the precursors explained. Museums that preserve our history and knowledge but do not force it upon anyone. Species may visit, may learn, may take inspiration from our successes and our failures, but they will choose what to take and what to leave behind. And you? Somin asked. What will happen to you? The precursor's forms became brighter, more peaceful. We will do what we should have done millions of years ago. We will rest. Our consciousness will fade into the cosmic background, becoming part of the universe we tried so hard to control. That sounds like dying, Minho said quietly. No. The precursors replied. It sounds like finally living. For too long we have existed without purpose, trapped by our own perfection. Now we can become part of something larger than ourselves. Deho felt a deep sadness for these ancient beings who had spent so long afraid of their own legacy. Is there anything we can do for you before you go? Remember us not as conquerors or destroyers, but as teachers of a different kind. Learn from our mistakes. Do not let the fear of failure prevent you from trying. Do not let the pursuit of perfection steal your ability to grow. The ship shuddered gently, and they could feel it settling into a stable orbit around Sanctuary's rest. Through the transparent walls, they watched as systems throughout the vessel powered down or reconfigured themselves. The ship is becoming a library, Somin breathed, watching as weapon systems transformed into display areas and control rooms became reading spaces. A place where anyone can come to learn about the precursors without being forced to become like them? Will other species understand what happened here? Hyunwoo asked. They will learn, the precursors said, just as you learned, each in their own time, in their own way. That is how growth should happen, through choice, not force. Admiral Sunwoo's voice came through the communication system again. Deho, we're receiving signals from all 17 ship locations. They're all transforming the same way. Whatever you negotiated, it worked. Deho smiled, feeling the weight of the galaxy's fate lifting from his shoulders. Sunwoo, send word to the Galactic Council. The crisis is over. The ships are no longer a threat. What should I tell them about what happened? Deho looked at the precursors, whose forms were becoming more transparent by the minute. Tell them that sometimes the best solution to an impossible problem is helping everyone involved remember what they really want. The precursors spoke one final time, their voice growing fainter. Kang Deho, you have given us the greatest gift possible, the courage to let go. We hope your species and all others will remember that true strength lies not in controlling the future, but in trusting it to unfold as it should. We'll try, Deho promised. We'll make mistakes, but we'll keep trying. That is all anyone can do. The chamber filled with light as the precursor's consciousness began to disperse into the cosmos. For a moment, Deho felt their vast loneliness lifting, replaced by something like peace. Then they were gone, leaving behind only the transformed ship and the knowledge it contained. 3 hours later, the team was back aboard Admiral Sunwoo's flagship, reporting to the Galactic Council. Leaders from dozens of species listened as Deho explained what had happened. The response was mixed. Some were disappointed that humanity had refused such incredible technology. Others were relieved that the crisis was over. So these monuments, asked Counselor Thex, a representative of the crystalline Valathi, any species can visit them? According to the precursors, yes, Somin replied. But visitors will have to choose for themselves what to learn and how to use that knowledge. The ships won't force anything on anyone, and if some species choose to misuse what they find, Then they'll face the consequences of their choices, Deho said. Just like the precursors did. The point isn't to prevent all mistakes, it's to let people make their own decisions and learn from the results. 1 month later, Deho finally got his vacation. He sat on the beach at Sanctuary's Rest, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of purple and gold. In orbit above, the former Void Serpent hung peacefully, its transformation into a library, nearly complete. Already, ships from various species had begun arriving to study the precursor's legacy. So-Min joined him on the beach, carrying 2 drinks and a datapad full of research notes. The Galactic Archaeological Commission has cleared me to publish everything about the precursors, she said, settling into the sand beside him. That's good news. The best part is, I won't be the only one studying them anymore. Teams from every major species want to visit the monument ships. We're going to learn more about ancient galactic history in the next few years than we have in the past century. Deho smiled, taking a sip of his drink. And all because someone finally told them it was okay to let go. You did more than that, So-Min said. You reminded them that the universe is big enough for everyone to find their own path, including ancient beings who thought they had seen everything. Above them, stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere among those stars, 16 other monument ships waited for visitors who would come seeking knowledge and leave with wisdom. The galaxy was the same as it had been a month ago, but also completely different. For the first time in millions of years, it was truly free to grow. Deho closed his eyes and listened to the waves lapping at the shore. Tomorrow, there would probably be another impossible problem waiting for him somewhere in the galaxy. Another conflict that needed solving, another situation that required careful negotiation. But tonight, he was just a tired man on a peaceful beach, watching the universe unfold exactly as it should, one choice at a time, one mistake at a time, one small step toward something better at a time. And that was perfect enough for anyone.